Hi everybody, Chris Schulte here, Greenlight Quilts. Today I would like to show you how I do and set up for my machine for invisible applique. Isn't this cute? It's my little commemorative ornament for the sampler. Anyway, so in a prior YouTube video I showed you and demonstrated how I made these perfect circles with the Karen K. Buckley perfect circles. It's a small size. I took the time to turn under the edge, and anytime I do that I like to proceed with the invisible applique stitch. Notice down here I did the blanket stitch, and you can check out my YouTube on how I set up my machine for that. But let me just go over a couple of things that are kind of important for invisible applique. First of all, you want to have your regular stitch plate, your 20-foot. I like a sharp needle, generally an 80. You could get away with a little bit smaller in this case, but just make sure it's a good, fresh, sharp needle. And I have my monofilament thread, and this is kind of funny. I bought this in 2017 at the Houston show. Oh, look at the size of that. The guy said I would never use it in a lifetime. And I think you can see right here, I'm about halfway through. But this is my favorite monofilament thread. It is the YLI brand size 4. And literally, it is like a human hair. It's thin. And you have to be careful when you're using monofilament thread because, well, I call it the teenage thread. It'll give you trouble if you let it. Be careful of the way that you feed it into your machine. So I have mine on a stand back here, feeding through. Normally people would put a spool of thread right here. You gotta lay it down and just make sure that that thread has nothing in its way from getting off and that the cap is on nice and tight, because it will snake around everything and that causes trouble when you're never ever put monofilament thread in your bobbin. You're just going to use your regular piecing cotton in your bobbin. And always reduce the tension on the top by at least 2. And we do that because the monofilament thread is really stretchy. And if it goes through the regular tensions in your machine, when you sew it in, it gets sewn in really tight. And then it will have a tendency to recoil and it will distort and pucker your piece. Now this is a great technique. So I have my Bernina machine. A lot of the newer current computerized machines will have this stitch, and what it is a series of straight stitches that are tiny, and then it'll take a tiny little zigzag. And I have referred to this as the bite me stitch because it takes a little bite every time. So you kind of have to look at your, if you don't have a Bernina, if you do have a Bernina, it's under the stitches, under the quilting stitches. So I have my 20-foot on, my needle set in the down position, and because the stitch is so tiny, you don't really need a locking stitch, but I went ahead and set up my machine anyway. So I set my straight stitch, number 1, and I moved the needle all the way over to the right, and I put it at a 1 millimeter. And what you do is run the inside, run your applique right to the inside of your toe. And with the little notchy thing in the foot, your needle will go right next to your piece. What you want to do is to sew the straight stitches directly next to your applique. So I'm going to go. So I did 4, okay? And this is another one where you're gonna wanna lift your presser foot and pivot. Don't drive. I have this one, he's been pressed and set and glued down, but I still am not sure that it's gonna, it's not gonna shift. Okay, now I'm gonna switch it to my bite me stitch, which my machine has it set at 0.9 width and 0.9 length. So you can tell it's a really tiny stitch. Always, always run a sample with your machine and the threads to make sure that everything is going as it should. You don't have to adjust the tensions or anything. All right, so I'm going to get going. Took a bite in, and now I'm going to go right next to it. And then I'll go 1, 2, 3, bite, 1, 2, 3, bite. And again, this is a lot faster than needle turn applique, so we're just slow and steady is a good place to be. And as I'm stitching, you know, I am a huge advocate of trying a sample first before putting the needle to your piece to make sure that your tensions are set well and that the threads are all good. But I've done this so many times, I can tell. One of the problems that some people have with this tiny little stitch is the tension is kind of intense. So what happens is the bobbin thread might do a little peekaboo at the bite stitch. And if that's the case, and if you're having trouble and lowering the tensions on the top don't work, and if you have a machine that can be set up like embroidery, then you're going to want to set it up like embroidery. And what that does is it puts the tension tighter on the bottom so that that bobbin thread is kind of held down. And I can tell my foot is wanting to pause with all the bulk of the seams. But by knowing that, I can overcome it. And again, this is part of a 3-hour class that I do with my invisible machine applique. But this is actually the mechanics. That's for all my Scrapple people who have taken my class but forgot what I said. This is for you. And it is really, it is fun to have the different types of options when it comes to applique, that we don't always have to do blanket stitch. All right, see, now I'm back where I started. And since the stitches are so tiny, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to take it out. See, you can tell that's a nice tight tension. Wonder if it's stuck on anything. But I got through. Okay, and then here's a really up close. Ooh, you can barely see it. See that? Okay, and that is how I set up my machine and proceed with invisible applique. Have a great day. Be happy. Be scrappy. Bye.